Everyone laughed on his face. 10 years later, they regretted it. Mitch Hunter was barely 21 years old when his car collided with a 100-volt electrical pylon, almost taking his life away 20 years ago. Bravely and despite his severe injuries, he pulled the female passenger in front of him out of the way. The electricity surged up his foot, into his body and out of his face. Within only 5 minutes, the former soldier was no longer recognizable, even though he had undergone more than 20 initial corrective operations, including skin grafts from his own legs, arms, and back. Children would always scream when they saw him walking down the street. A few years later, he submitted himself to become among the world's first persons to have a face transplant in 2011. Now 42 years old and father of 3 children, he finally had the courage to step out and speak about his recovery and tough experience. Hunter says he's never felt better in his skin. "I feel exactly as healthy as I did when I was 21 years old and I feel fantastic," Hunter said in an interview with Wish TV8 on Monday at his Speedway home. According to him, "I look back on it as something that made me stronger. The fact of the matter is that while I would like my leg and my face back, I would not be who I am today if that had not happened." During a trip down to North Carolina, one of his friends lost control of the steering wheel and slammed the car into an overhead power pole. When his girlfriend leapt out of the car, she was struck by one of the down power lines, and that's when Hunter pushed her out of danger. However, his act of bravery wasn't without consequences. An electrical connection was established to his arm, and 10,000 volts flowed through his body for 5 minutes, exiting via his hand and face. Luckily, Hunter has no memory of those horrific minutes. He and his girlfriend just carried on with their life and went through all the surgical procedures he had to undertake. Doctors were only able to perform the only kind of skin graft procedures that were available at the time. However, he wasn't convinced that it was enough to restitute his face. As his fiancée, Katerina, became pregnant, he couldn't bear the thought of his own child being terrified of his face, so he looked for fresh medical breakthroughs. He eventually found one just as he needed. A team of 30 specialists at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston worked for more than 14 hours to completely attach the new face to the patient. A microvascular procedure was required to link the 2 main arteries to the new face, to allow his heart to begin providing the face with blood. His nose, eyelids, lips, facial motion, muscles, and nerves were all replaced as a result of the surgery. Only 2 successful face transplants have been performed in the United States, and only a total of 10 had been performed worldwide. It was a risky procedure he was willing to take for the sake of his children. After a series of screening tests, the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston finally gave Hunter the green light to proceed with the procedure and started the search for a donor. More than 30 procedures were required to finish the operation, and they began right after the search for a donor was launched. A microvascular procedure was required in order to link the 2 main arteries to the new face, allowing his heart to begin providing the face with blood. A team of 30 doctors worked for more than 14 hours straight to completely attach the new face to his body. Hunter's nose, eyelids, lips, facial motion, muscles, and the nerves providing feeling were all replaced as a result of the procedure. It took 5 months for the swelling to reduce and for the characteristics of his facial features to show. 5 years later, Hunter grew a beard and had only a slight indication of damage around his eyes. The Boston physicians are still attempting to correct it with laser therapy. Even though Hunter still requires additional medical attention in the future, he's never been happier. He says with the biggest smile, "The heat, the cold, the ache, the tickle, the touching of my beard, the kiss on my cheek. I think it's going to be an incredible journey. I mean, it's been a long and difficult road. I'd like to advise people not to be concerned about the tiny things in life and to simply enjoy themselves, because you never know when something as precious as love will be taken away. Express your feelings to those you care about." Hunter posted a viral video on TikTok where he describes his experience, saying that he feels as if he put someone else's face on his own, which is technically the case. For those of you wondering about what the procedure of face transplantation is and how it's done, we've got you covered. Face transplant is a therapy option for some patients who suffer from severe facial deformity and have no other options to get normal faces. A donor tissue from a deceased person is used to replace all or part of a person's face. It is a very complicated and sensitive operation that requires months of planning and large surgical teams to complete successfully. Only a small number of transplant institutions around the world carry out the surgery. Every candidate for a face transplant must undergo a thorough evaluation in order to make sure the surgery achieves the best possible results in both appearance and function. Even though face transplant may improve your quality of life, it's a high-risk surgery with no foreseeable results or side effects on your body and immune system. Special medications and immunosuppressants must be taken regularly in order to lessen the possibility of having your body reject the transplanted skin. Face transplant's main purpose is to improve both the aesthetic and the functional abilities of the patient suffering from severe tissue and skin damage, such as chewing, swallowing, talking, and breathing through the nasal passage. Individuals who suffer from significant facial deformities may seek this surgery to alleviate the social isolation they face as a result of their condition and abnormal looks, just like Hunter's case, who even scared children by simply walking by. A face transplant is a very difficult process to complete. Between 2005 and 2017, roughly 40 patients, ranging in age from 20 to 60, underwent a face transplant procedure, and not everyone was able to get the results they needed or wanted. Several people have died as a result of the illness that followed the surgery or the transplant rejection they've experienced. Complications can arise as a result even if the operation was initially successful. In addition to that, immunosuppressive medicines include various side effects and sometimes don't work properly, which means your body will reject the transplant. It's also possible that you require additional procedures or hospitalizations to treat problems that arise after the surgery. It's possible that you'll be in surgery for 10 or more hours. The dangers associated with surgery and recovery can even be life-threatening. Blood loss, blood clots, and infection are among the common complications. In some cases, the new face and other donor tissues may be rejected by your body's immune system, and you could eventually lose a portion or all of your new appearance as well as some functionality. It's also possible that you'll be rejected on more than one occasion. Several trips to the hospital could be needed for an extensive dose of anti-rejection medications in order to control a potential rejection response. Your doctors may even decide to change the type of anti-rejection medication you're taking. If the rejection is not controlled in time, it can be fatal. Its signs and symptoms must be thoroughly understood so that you will be able to respond in time when faced with them. Among the symptoms of rejection is the swelling and a change in the hue of your skin. Aside from the rejection problem, it is highly possible that the anti-rejection medications you'll need to take on a regular basis for the rest of your life will cause your immune system to become weakened and more prone to illness. Even though the medication aids in the prevention of tissue rejection, it increases your risk of contracting a number of other infections that could even be lethal at times. A higher risk of kidney damage, cancer, diabetes, and other dangerous illnesses has also been related to the use of immunosuppressive medications. You should take all of this into consideration before you decide to have face transplant surgery, especially if it is not a big necessity. Living with a few scars is better than living with the constant risk of dying because of a medication side effect or a rejection.